where are you going? Where are the places that you go to? Who do you see when you go there? Do you go and see people that, when older, they might not be clad appropriately, might not be wearing appropriate gear, clothes, in other words? They're showing the awrah. People taking illicit substances in terms of Muslims. People, what are they doing there? What's going on in the places that you go to? The people that oppress themselves, as well as, and particularly those that oppress others. But also the connotation in this is those who oppress themselves. If a person oppresses themselves, why would one want to associate with that individual? Because the person who oppresses themselves is going to oppress you. And by you being associated with that individual, you will oppress yourself. Unless it's for da'wah, of course. And he says, this is an important one. He says, أخرج عنها همك وفارقها بقلبك بئسة الدار هي. Did I not read it in English, or did I read it? He says, drive its anxieties from yourself and divide yourself from it with your heart. So it's the good old, I don't want to go to nightclubs, right? I don't want to go to dance, whatever they call them, I don't know what they call them these days, nightclubs, right? But I'm interested in it. My heart's attached to it. What happens there? I want to go just once to see what it's like. I want to go and just, experience it. That's the anxiety of associating oneself with the people when Allah was revealed to Sayyidina Musa by Allah Azza wa Jal. That's the place of people oppressing themselves when and oppressing each other when subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not only that one doesn't associate themselves with those people, but one drives the anxiety out of one's heart. What does he mean by concern? Yeah, what if one time, just once, I did that, I'd smoked a joint? Or what if one time I just, took whatever it was, some sort of illicit? What if one time I just went and hung out with those people? I went to a place of ill repute. Just once, just to see what it's like. I'm not going to do anything. What happens there? What happens if an individual dies in a place like that? No one knows when they're going to live and when they're going to die. Then they get resurrected with those people, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's that waham, right? That's what happened to Sayyidina Adam and Sayyidina Hawa, alayhim as-salam. Excuse me. It was shaitan. Waswasa lahum ash-shaitan. The shaitan came back and whispered, go to the tree. That tree, you'll live forever. You'll be so happy. Mulkun, he said, khuld, you'll live forever. You have sovereignty. You have like mulk. You have like a kingdom. He kept on saying it, And they knew they couldn't eat from the tree. But it was the hum, right? They were concerned. Maybe. Well, what if there's something good there? What if we're missing out? What if we're missing out? And that's the whole thing. We're always missing out on what? Missing out on what? Wherever there's a high, there's always a low. So we might see the great Facebook pictures of whoever it might be, or the social media pictures of whoever doing whatever, especially when it's illicit. It all looks fantastic. But what's the reality of it? What happens after the high when people are passed out, when people need to go to a hospital and get treated, or they take like the what do they call them, the party drugs or whatever, that are made in like someone's backyard, or they're made in toilets and stuff like that, and they're dangerous to people, and they have to go get their stomach pumped, and they have a car accident because they're drunk, and then they have to go on to go to court, they lose their license, they get a fine, they go to community service, all these things that aren't posted. And we get that all the time. People come as a solicitor, people come to me and they say, my so-and-so went to court for this and they won. I always say to the clients, and I say, have you ever heard someone who said they went to court and lost? Think about it. No one ever goes to court and lost. Everyone says, whatever, or they mention, just forget about it, push it aside. So people are not going to tell you how bad it was. They're not going to tell you the downside. They're not going to tell you what happens when they're feeling the next day sick for hours and hours and hours, and they can't get up and do what they have to do. They can't think properly. They've got headaches. Whatever else is going on with their body, if it's been going on for a long time. You're not going to hear about that. That's not something that's so the issue is, don't worry about what you're missing out on. And it goes back to what was spoken about last week, in terms of if a person has a bit of dhawq for the next life, for the unseen, then they don't worry about that, because the flavor they get from it, the taste they get from something from the next world, is far outweighs. Or one of the one of the pious people, he was in the Haram Sharif, and he was visiting. He fell asleep on the Kaaba, fell asleep leaning against the Kaaba, and he saw himself in Jannah. And then when he woke up, he didn't drink for a number of days, and he didn't eat for almost 40 days, they say. And he said, why? He said, because I tasted the water in Jannah, and I tasted the food in Jannah. Now when I eat the food of this world, it tastes like dirt. There's a dhawq. There was some sort of a connection, some sort of a flavor he had for the next life. So even if we get a little inkling of that, that, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal, should be enough for us to build on, to plant the seed that forms, like the biggest trees, the redwood cedars in California, the world's biggest trees. They come from a tiny little, almost microscopic little seed. Something that's so small, when a'udhu billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it can even barely be seen. And yet, how huge it becomes, because it's planted and it's nurtured and it's looked after. And that's what we need to do with the good things and the good experiences that we have of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. We need to nurture those experiences, we need to value those experiences, and we need to be grateful to Allah azza wa jal for those experiences, so that Allah can increase them, insha'Allah azza wa jal. وَفَارِقْهَا بِقَلْبِكَ, at least in the heart. It's actually the main thing. The one's heart isn't connected to those things of evil, or vice, more correctly. Except someone, say for those who do good, for whom it is a place of excellency. So that really applies to the da'i, to the caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The caller to Allah azza wa jal is entitled to go wherever that person deems fit. So that might be a house of ill repute. That might mean a brewery or whatever it might be. That might be whatever one decides that if they can have the strength to do that. So it's up to the individual to make that decision. It's up to the individual. One of the Salihin in Damascus, he used to, especially in Ramadan, go around to where the prostitutes were and ask her how much she made for the day, how much she made for the month, and give her the whole month so she could fast. She didn't have to do haram during that time. And then go around to taverns and buy the alcohol and spill all the alcohol. Now, if a person can do that, that's great. But if an individual is going to be one, if they go to the prostitutes, they're going to end up, when a'udhu billahi in haram, then that person shouldn't go there. If they're going to go to the taverns and end up in haram, then they shouldn't go there. But if the person has the capacity to do that, and everyone's got to know his or her own vice. Some people, no matter how much money you give them, it will never corrupt them. It will never corrupt them. Some people, no matter what status they have, they'll never be corrupted by it. In other words, what popularity or influence they have. Some people, no matter how much they spend time around the opposite gender, they'll never be corrupted. And other people, a sniff of money, the talk of money corrupts them. A sniff or a talk of power corrupts them. The sniff or talk of people of the opposite gender corrupts them. So everyone's got to know where their vices are and where their weaknesses are and build the fortress. So if you're a person who is into power and status and being famous and being popular and everyone liking you, you need to know that that's going to cost you your deen in the end. And so if that's the case, when people start talking about who's going to be the president of this and who's going to be the boss of that, you need to know that you need to stay away from that. You need to know that not even to open the door to that issue, or popularity, or or beauty, or whatever it is, whatever the vices are that a person has, gluttony, or or miserliness, or whatever it is, whatever doors lead. If you're a person that likes to eat a lot and overeats, you need to be careful of how much food you put on your plate and what type of food you eat, and when you can stop, and when you should stop, and when you should drink water beforehand, or whatever the case might be. One has to set those own limits for oneself, because no one knows oneself more than yourself. No one knows you better than you. So they're the type of things that have to occur for that individual. He says, Ya Musa inni marsadun lil-zalim hatta akhidha minhu liman zalama. He said, O Moses, I shall watch the wrongdoer until I give those who wrong their rights from him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Musa alayhi salam about his sunnah, about the things that he does. And one of the things that he does, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, marsad, is a hide. Normally it's a place where people can watch other people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm a marsad, I am I am the watcher over those people who oppress others and take their rights. So we need to be careful about that. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He won't stop until the oppressor gives back the rights of the oppressed. And when we don't want to be in that position. We don't want to be in a position where Allah Azza wa Jal yuqis minna, they say, takes away from us that which we may cherish or we may need in order to give it to someone who we've oppressed. And that means words. They're probably the most oppressive things. And we know the hadith that on the Day of Judgment the man will come and he'll have mountains of good deeds, a mountain of good deeds. But shatam al-Haddad, he spoke about this person and backbited this person, shatam, like he degraded and not this person. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep taking from that person's good deeds and giving to other people till there's no more good deeds for that person. And then the people will say, well, there's still a line of people that person, when Allah Azza wa Jal said bad things about and oppressed, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, starts taking from their sins and giving to this person until he has a mountain of sins. Wasted his life. Wasted his life when Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah doesn't stop until He makes what's just in this world and then also in the next world. He says, Ya Musa, إذا رأيت الغني مقبلا فقل إذ ذنب عجلت وعقوبته إذا رأيت الفقير عجلت عقوبته وإذا رأيت الفقير مقبلا فقل مرحبا بشعائر الصالحين. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Moses, O Moses, when you see affluent, and the Arabic is when you see a person of affluence approaching, say, a sin the punishment of which has been hastened. And when you see a poor person approaching, or an impoverished person, say, welcome to the emblem of the virtuous. So again, these are the principles upon which we found our lives. These are the principles upon which Imam al-Haddad has spoken since the beginning of the book until now, that allow us, bi'idhnillah, to be assisted in our deen, so we may find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We might have some dhawq about what's in the next life. So when you see the person of affluence, what's the natural reaction? You want to meet them. You want to talk to them. You want to get some benefit for yourself from them. Or later on, which is a traditional thing for some cultures, to say, oh, I was with so-and-so, some wealthy person, some person of position, some person of power. But what did he say? We should be saying, ذَنْبٌ عُجِّلَتْ عُقُوبَتُ. That person, right, that affluence in and of itself, and the affluent person, it's a dhanb, it's an evil that's been, the punishment of which has been given in this life. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla normally withholds the punishment to the next life. But sometimes He manifested in this life for the person of affluence. Because as it's been said in the Athar, affluence comes from two ways. From dhulm or from miserliness. From taking someone else's right, or for being miserly. And if we look at the world how it is today, right, and now we live in a world where secrets get exposed a lot easier than they used to back in the day because of social media and whatever else. But you can't always trust the authenticity of the things you see. But what are we finding out more and more? The traditional people, the indigenous people of whatever lands, they've been oppressed. So that other and generally white, but not always, other peoples can become affluent. So they can have what others don't have. So they can live the way that others don't live. So we have to realize that. When the people of affluence, and we might be that people of affluence, benefiting from the dhulm, from the oppression that others have inflicted upon those peoples. And we have to be aware of that. And so it's a uquba. Because in reality, what's happening? It's a uquba, it's a punishment, because do they feel safe? No. They feel happy? The people have done the oppressing. The people who are affluent? No, they don't. In Australia, for example, the number one cause of death for men between 18 and 45 is suicide. That's not a society, particularly for the males, that's not a society that's at ease. That's a uquba. That's a uquba. Or for mental health and all the other things that go along with it. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you see a person, if you see someone who's impoverished coming, say marhaban, welcome. You're the symbol of the righteous. Because the righteous people aren't interested in affluence. They're not interested in money. Excuse me. They're not interested in the financial prosperity that others are interested in. Why? because they're busy with getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why we say marhaban, welcome to the symbol or to the sign or the reflection of the righteous. Because righteous people can't be bothered doing that stuff. Whereas a person who seeks that affluence is going to be constantly busy in striving to get what they've got, to keep what they've got and increase it. So of course they haven't got time for Allah Azza wa Jal. لا تنسى ذكري فعند نسيانه تكثر الذنوب ولا تجمع المال فإن جمعه يقسي القلب. So for us again, first world problems, this one's pretty much on the top of the list. He says, O Moses, don't forget my remembrance, for with forgetfulness do sins increase, and do not amass wealth, for to do so hardens the heart. And again, that was another chapter. Just that one line is reflective of one whole chapter we did about zuhud, about being an ascetic and renunciation of the world. You remember that one? It's one of the maqamat as well. It's what, if you want to get to Allah, one has to have that station, right? Because when a person starts to forget Allah, what's the hadith that says? The person who, when they're doing zina, the time they're doing zina, the iman's gone. Or when they're stealing, the time that they're stealing, there's no iman for that moment in time, because their connection to Allah and their connection to the ghaib and the unseen has been overwhelmed, has been rubbed out, if you like, by their connection to sin, by connection to their own desires, by connection to doing what they want to do and the tastes and the flavors they want to get and the feelings they want to get when a'udhu billah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in that instant, one forgets Allah. One forgets they're a believer. One forgets the Prophet ﷺ has been sent to them. One forgets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the books. One forgets all these things when a'udhu billah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is one of the secrets of having a shaykh. Because the shaykh is malmoos, someone who can, a spiritual guide to guide one, because one can, it's a lot easier to recount one's shaykh. It's a thing that one deals with and spends time with and has thoughts over and whatever it might be. So that's one of the secrets, that when someone's going to fall into that, to reminisce and to think about one's shaykh, and bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spiritual support will assist them to leave that when a'udhu billah sin. And in particular, he says, do not amass wealth, for it hardens the heart. How true is that? There's so much research on it that the poorest people are the most generous people. Even in Australia, Wiley Park down the road, it's southwestern Sydney. It's one of the poorer areas in Sydney. It's the most generous area in the whole of Australia in terms of giving to charity. Not this census, but the census before it. It's the most charitable area. The most charitable area. And there was a thing that I saw one time about these ladies in Africa, it might have been Angola. They earn like $1.40 a day breaking rocks into gravel. And when they heard about one of the cyclones that happened, I think it was in the United States, they sent $900 American to the people that were in that cyclone to assist them, to help them. Because even though they may have a bit of money, their hearts aren't attached to it. Their hearts are attached to something else, greater than them, Allah Azza wa Jal. And so how many times do you hear people of money how often? When someone says, it's their own fault. And the Yahud, when they said it in the Bani Israel, they said, Yadullahi maghlula. They said, Allah is not generous, that's why He's asking us for money. That's what level they got it to. So Allah doesn't have, He can't give anymore, so He needs us to give. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or they say, that's by their own doing they got into that state. Or they say, if it wasn't for the decree of Allah, they wouldn't have got into that state. Why? Because the love of the dunya, the love of wanting money, the love of wanting affluence, and power comes with that as well. So it hardens the heart to say, why should I send to the people of the Rohingyans or the Uyghurs in Western China or somewhere? They'll be fine. Allah will grant them something. Why? My heart becomes hard. We forget those people. We forget the impoverished, the homeless people that live in Australia. How many thousands of people walk past them every single day? How many thousand? Would it be a big deal to give 20 cents or 50 cents or $1 every time or whatever? Especially if you don't go there all the time. It wouldn't, but we harden our hearts towards that because our focus, when a'udhu billah, especially in the CBD, is generally money. When a'udhu billah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then at the end he says, قُلْ لِلظَّالِمِينَ, he says, يَا مُوسَى قُلْ لِلظَّالِمِينَ لَا يَذْكُرُونِ فَإِنَّهُمْ إِذَا ذَكَرُونِ أَذْكُرْهُمْ بِاللَّعْنَةِ لأنني آليت على نفسي أن أذكر من ذكرني. Excuse me. He says, O Musa, tell the Zalimeen, it's not that it's the transgressors, the tyrants, not to remember me, for if they remember me, I shall remember them with a curse. For I have imposed upon myself that I shall remember those who remember me. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about the Zalimeen in the Qur'an? He says, La'natullahi alal Zalimeen. That's what that is. Right? The people who are oppressive to others, people who are taking people's rights. And when we talk about, we do that as well by talking about people mainly and not paying our debts if we have a debt, or not fulfilling our contracts or our promises if we make a promise as well. That's on a global scale. Right? Like the people used to say, we wish we wish we had what Qarun had. The guy was an oppressor. Right? He had so many treasures that he had needed camels, 70 camels, just to carry the keys to the locks of all the things he possessed. Crazy amount of wealth. And in the end, the earth ended up swallowing up because he's a zalim. Why would a person want to be like the zalims? We talk about people like, let's say, for example, people that run tech companies and all this sort of stuff. What are they really doing? They're making their tech products where? In countries where people are getting paid basically nothing, where they basically have no rights. If they don't like it, they'll just get someone else to do it. And then we laud these people. Wow, so-and-so. Wow, read his book. Read his book. Or in Australia, there's not many of those. There's a few. But in Australia, what's it mainly about? Old money. Right? So the people that we hear about on TV that are rich, they're not rich generally because they made it themselves. I think they're very, 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 very few in Australia. They're rich because their father was rich, and their grandfather was rich, and their great-grandfather was rich, who generally got a land grant from the monarchy, because the monarchy, in other words, the Queen and King, whoever it was at the time, because they had some connection with them back in England, and so they got a grant for 500,000 hectares or 500,000 acres of land. They started having sheep on the land, they started having cattle on the land, and they had to transport that to wherever. So they had to own the transport lines. They had to lobby the government to build the roads for them. Then they had to store their stock at the docks, right? So they bought land there, and they bought things there, and they lobbied the government to make it easy for them. That's how they made their money. It's not like, millionaire dreams, you do this and you become startups. That's the big thing now, startup. You become a startup, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. That's not the way. That's the impression that we're given, but that's particularly in Australia. Australia is old money. In other countries, you can make it, but you have to sell your soul. If you want to make, even Bill Gates, he used to live on Mercer Island in Seattle. We went there. We went and seen his house. It's more than 1 mile long, his house. I saw it with my own eyes. This is like 1995, before all this even happened. Yeah, his house is 1 mile long. And he used to, Mercer Island's an island just off Seattle. He had to go across in the bridge, and he lived on the other side of the island. So what he did, he lobbied the government to put a tunnel through. They didn't do it, so he paid for it himself, just so it could be quick for him to go through. Right? He had a full-size basketball court, full-size. People that I knew there, they actually knew his kids, and they'd been in the house. Not that I was interested in going there. I was like, yeah, for real? For what? For what? And the impression is that, and if you look at the story, what was the story of the bloke? Didn't he rip off his mate? Didn't he steal the IP from someone? Right? Dhulm. It's dhulm. So then generally, that's the only way. That's the only way that money is gathered. By dhulm, by doing haram, or shuh, by being extremely miserly, like you read about these super wealthy blokes. The guy's been driving like a 1978 Ford since 1978, right? What's the point of having money if you don't enjoy it? What's the point? And the dhulm is, if you have money, others have right on you. That's where the real dhulm is. Like we talk about our own kind, the Muslims that have exorbitant amounts, billions and billions and billions of dollars, and instead of helping out the ummah, they buy a boat for like $500 million. Or have a boat, man. I'm not against having a boat. If you need to spend $500 million on a boat, for real? Like, serious? And you're a Muslim? Enjoy life, but don't be in that situation where your money is making la'na on that individual. The money is cursing that person because they're not using it in a way pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I don't want to even hear those people remembering me. Don't make dua to me. Don't remember me if you're doing dhulm. That's for the big boys. And for us, if we're doing dhulm on our family, we break our connections with our family members. We're not, there's no birr al-walidain. Or we break up, we don't speak with our brothers and our sisters or our uncles and our aunties or whatever the case might be. And we're talking bad about people and backbiting people. We're making dhulm on those people. And if we're making dhulm, then Allah says, don't remember me. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that, adhkuruni adhkurkum, remember me and I'll remember you. So, but if you're a good person in terms of what in Allah's definition, and you remember Allah, then Allah will remember you in a good way. If a person's a zalimun a'udhu billah, they're a tyrant, they're an oppressor, and they're remembering Allah, Allah sends a la'na on that person. Curses that person, a'udhu billah azza wa jal. And a person who's cursed by Allah is not going to have any pleasure in this world and certainly in the next world, none whatsoever. Alright, so any questions about any of that? All straightforward and good? Alhamdulillah. Alright, so Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Don't forget that in this next coming few days, it's Ashura. So it's the 10th of Muharram. And we know the story about that. Afwan. We know the story about that Sayyidina Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he went from Mecca to Medina, he saw Bani Israel, the Jews. There was a few different tribes of Jews in Medina, and they were waiting. They were fasting on the 10th of Muharram, and then the Prophet of Allah asked them, why are you doing that? He said, that's the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emancipated Musa, saved Musa from Fir'aun, the day they left Egypt, and said Musa, Allah Azza wa Jal, he struck the sea, and the sea opened up, and there were 12 different channels, and each 12, one of the tribes walked through the tribes and all that sort of thing. And then also it's like, that's the day that Allah Azza wa Jal, they say, Adam alayhi salatu wasalam was forgiven. That's the day that the flood stopped on Sayyidina Nuh, the day that Ibrahim alayhi salam was in the fire. So not just the day that Yunus alayhi salam came out of the whale. So all the different things they say happen on the 10th of Muharram. So for us it's a sunnah to fast that day. If you can fast the 9th and the 10th, it's better because with that way it's more what the people, the book did. We're doing something a little bit different. And the fadl is there for us to be associated with those people that Allah Azza wa Jal saved and emancipated. So Allah can save and emancipate us from our own vices first and foremost, and secondly from the people when Allah Azza wa Jal that turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we can be of the group that is naju, that are saved from Allah. Any questions about anything at all? All good? الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنام وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا أرحم الراحمين نسألك أن ترحمنا برحمتك الواسعة وأن تيسر أمورنا بالحياة وبعد الممات وأن تثبت أقدامنا على الصراط المستقيم. يا أرحم الراحمين نسألك يا أرحم الراحمين أن ترزقنا ذوقا من عندك يا أرحم الراحمين، ذوقا غيبيا ذوقا ربانيا يا أرحم الراحمين حتى نعرفك حق المعرفة. ونسألك يا أرحم الراحمين أن تسن بنبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم نسألك يا أرحم الراحمين أن تنور حياتنا بلا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله، وقبورنا بلا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله، وتحشرنا يا أرحم الراحمين على لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله، وأن تدخلنا الجنة بلا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله، وحققنا بحقائق لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله في الحياة وبعد الممات يا أرحم الراحمين. نسألك يا أكرم الأكرمين أن تكرمنا كما أكرمت عبادك الصالحين. ونسألك يا أرحم الراحمين أن توفق مشايخ لما هو خير لهم ولنا في الحياة، وأن تجعلهم قرة عين النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، وأن ترفع درجاتهم عندك يا أرحم الراحمين، وتعيد علينا من بركاتهم وأنوارهم وأسرارهم ونفحاتهم وأنوارهم وعلومهم يا أرحم الراحمين. Ya Allah, we ask you to elevate our status in this world and the next, and to benefit us from the knowledge that we've learned, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to allow us to practice that we've learned and to embody it in our lives. Ya Allah, we ask you to increase us in nearness to you in all circumstances and situations. and give us the flavor of the life hereafter, Ya Allah, so that the senses that we have of this life may become dull, and the senses that we have for the next life may become bright, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to make sure those people that are near to you and that draw near to you by the things that you love, and we ask you, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, to accept us with the pious and the righteous. Bi khairin wa lutfin wa afiyah, wa ila hadrat al-Nabi bi sirr al-Fatiha.